This is Jerry Lee Lewis, and this is one of his proteges, Hank Williams Jr.
Jerry Lee doesn't walk on stage and politely thank an audience for being there. No. Yeah, Jerry Lee doesn't ask for your attention, he demands it.
Jerry made showmanship a competition, and for lack of a better metaphor, he was the Michael Jordan of the sport. Give a thumbs up if you agree with that. He'd stand next to or even on his piano and thrash and bang that thing until it capitulated. The story goes that he literally pounded the ivory off the keys of his piano he learned on growing up in Faraday, Louisiana. I'm Billy Dukes, and the man they called the Killer has died. Jerry Lee Lewis was 87 years old and just days removed from becoming a newest member of the Country Music Hall of Fame. Sadly, Lewis couldn't be there on October 16th, but Hank would fill in, reading a written statement that Jerry would later post to Facebook himself.
To be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame is the highest honor in country music. Through over 60 years singing music professionally, country has always been the genre where I felt the most at home. Between my fellow artists, radio, and the industry players, I'm honored to be going into that Hall of Fame rotunda with some of my heroes.
There's a link to the full speech in the description section, and we'll share what we know about how he died in a moment. But first, a few words about how he lived. It's the second time this month that we've buried a Country Music Hall of Famer. Subscribers to this channel showed appreciation for how we covered Loretta Lynn, and before her, Naomi Judd's death, and we'll try to do the same with Jerry Lee, so tap that subscribe button if that interests you. It's complicated, because he's equally known for being a rock and country pioneer as he is for a life of violence, drugs, death, and factually speaking, bigamy.
Baby, you can't go wrong.
That's Jerry Lee singing his first big hit, Whole Lotta Shaking Going On, and you see that even early on he was an animal on the stage. Great Balls of Fire, Breathless, and High School Confidential were a few more crossover hits, and within 18 months he was an important part of the $1 Million Quartet, the name given to a group of Memphis artists that included Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, and Sam Perkins.
You broke my wheel, that's what a thrill. If you raised it, whoop, balls of fire.
He was a superstar when in May 1958 he flew into London, England with his wife Myra, who was only 13 years old and was also his first cousin once removed. The scandal killed his career, and for a decade he'd flounder. She was his third wife, and depending on the accounting, several of his 7 marriages overlapped, requiring him to remarry the same woman to make it legal. 2 of his wives died under suspicious circumstances, and in 1984, a Rolling Stone journalist went even as far to suggest that the killer was a killer. He was never accused of such, however, even if his often violent temper and hard living would land him in jail on several occasions. The popularity of Lewis as a rock and roller, he was part of the very first class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, overshadows his success as a country singer. While he never won a CMA award and was never even nominated, he'd perform at the show and enjoy considerable success on country radio. Beginning in 1968, he started a string of 11 straight top 10 records, like What Made Milwaukee Famous, There Must Be More to Love Than This, and Chantilly Lace.
Oh, baby, that's what I like.
Did you have a favorite Jerry Lee Lewis song? Let us know in the comments section. Stars like Hank Williams Jr. would call him a major influence, and others would too if not for his complicated and at times ugly personal conduct. The 80s brought troubles with the IRS and more marriages and children. Lewis had 6 total, including 2 who died about 10 years apart. The loss of my mother and 2 sons got to me, he once told People. I was drinking heavy. I needed a 5th of tequila just to sober up. I couldn't cut a record. It wasn't the marriages that brought me down. It was the passing of the caskets. The 5th of tequila quote was a favorite of his. In fact, he'd use it again in 1979 while talking to Rolling Stone. That feature captures the essence of Lewis, including his willingness to stretch the truth. Early on, he'd tell the magazine that he once pushed a piano into the ocean, but later he'd admit that if he did it, he didn't remember. Quote, "A lot of times people make things up, and I just go along with them." Then he tells the magazine about how much he loves pianos and would never hurt them, But then country singer Conway Twitty tells Rolling Stone about a time he watched Jerry Lee Lewis push a piano off the stage, out of the venue, across a parking lot, and right into the water. Quote, "If everything they say I've done is true, I'd have been put in the penitentiary long ago," Lewis says, unironically. After a false report of his death on October 26th, Lewis's publicist confirmed to Taste of Country that the singer died at home in Mississippi on the morning of Friday, October 28th. His cause of death was not listed, but his wife Judith was by his side. A few days earlier, she had said, quote, "He's ready to leave." Jerry Lee Lewis is the ultimate test of love the art, not the artist. He once told The Guardian that he wasn't even sure if he'd be going to heaven or hell, but he spent a lot of nights worrying about it. The honest self-reflection shows an awareness of the pain that he's caused others, including a bassist who he once shot in the chest on accident. I'll invite you now to share how you'll remember Jerry Lee Lewis, but ask that you comment without attacking someone else. It's complicated, but as Jerry liked to say, but man, that's rock and roll. I'm Billy Dukes with Taste of Country. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing.